What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another Unreal Engine 5 game development live stream where we're working on our Deck Knight project, a game built from scratch using Unreal Engine 5, C++, blueprints, the gameplay, ability system plugin, and all of that good stuff. So today we're back from a little bit of a holiday. We're back, relaxing. So I wanted to get a little bit of streaming done ahead for the week. And I wanted to kind of fix what I've been working on with the input buffering system, because like before, I'm pretty sure it's still in the components somewhere. There's this flush cache movement input axis value. We're basically storing an input axis value so that we can read it from other systems, so that we can know, hey, if at the moment that we buffered an action, what was the stick direction, right? So we can actually take that into consideration in those abilities like dodges or attacks to say, hey, if this was buffered with a direction in mind and the player is currently not pushing any kind of stick direction, then we use this as a fallback kind of result. And this was inspired to kind of improve based on some of the which I can never remember his name. Quad Soler, his recent newsletter, because he talked about input buffering and he mentioned this as well, which is super useful. I believe I asked him on his Twitter about what he does for input buffering, so I wonder if this was at all inspired by that request. So I'm going to just share that documentation for you guys there, just so you have a reference to what I'm referring to. But yeah, for my game, we're using stage free for the most part when it comes to a lot of our actions, I should say. Not everything, but the main weapons and I believe the evasive actions as well is stage free. I don't know what I called it though. Did I call it dodge? Did I call it evasive? Let me just do ST player. Yeah, he did. So we have this, right? We have a payload. We don't actually have the payload put in. Which I probably should, right? Because we are using this event and required event, and we're not really passing in the payload struct for that either. So we're definitely going to be using it, and we definitely need to be passing it along. So that's what we're going to work on. We're going to see if we can reintroduce this cached input direction value. And then if we could do that, then we can start making plays about updating our inputs in general. Because I do want to swap out how I'm handling some of the mechanics here. Because like on gamepad, we have X, right? We have the basic combo. And then if you hold, you have that. And then Y is the ranged. But I'm thinking that maybe the weapons, like the daggers, for example, should have a light and heavy with like something on the Y as well. And then we would move the ranged weapon to like left trigger or right trigger or something. And then we would change how we navigate the cards, because right now they're on the left and right trigger, so maybe they can be on the left and right bumpers, or they stay on the triggers, and the ranged weapon gets to like the left bumper or something, or the right bumper, and then the coordinate action for activating our ability still stays on like the coordinate action of like the right trigger. Oh yeah, that always breaks when we don't have it loaded correctly. I'll need to figure out why that doesn't just eliminate itself correctly, but future problems. So let's go ahead and get started, right? So we already have a custom payload, right? We want to pass that along to our input. So stage tree tab, I'm gonna have to say GSE probably, and then input buffer actions array. I know I did it in the other state tree. Let me look. ST player dagger, and we pass it along. So ST input event payload, right? Here we go. And it has a couple things, right? We have whether it was buffered, the input action value. But I want to also add a vector to this and pass that along when we construct it. So we're going to include this as well as the required, event here. So we want to do the evade.triggered, then that same payload, and then our base ability should probably have that as an exposed parameter, like this struct. Sorry, we got Kitty here. I think she might want to come up. Hey. Oh, alright, let's see. Touch. Alright, everybody, we got Lola back. Say hi, everybody. You want to go in the basket? Oh, she caught the cable. No. There you go, Lola. Alright, let me. I think that's fine. Figure this out. That should be okay. Have everybody in view, right, Lola? You want to take a nap? Don't be chaotic. There. So that's the struct that we want to pass along. It's an instant struct. So we're gonna go into GA dodge. And we're gonna add that as a parameter because yeah, we have I think we pull in the cached here, right? Because yeah, we try to get the cached input direction. And I guess I set that in the base ability, if I remember right too. So maybe worth having it there, but we'll see. Let's make this struct, right? So we're gonna say input. Well, it's gonna be of type st payload, right? Or just input payload. There we go. We'll just call it input payload. Mark it visible. When we do something like that, and you know, we force the rebuild here, we have this, right? But we can't struct it because this is an instanced parameter, right? So we actually need to make it not of this type, but as an instanced struct. We can just force rebuild again. And we can make it of that type. So event payload. And we should be able to find it now in the enter event. That should be compatible. Now we gotta just add that to this, to the vector, to the actual struct of it all. So, I think it's in the buffer component, right? So let me just see where I'm actually declaring this payload. There should be two, right? Here's the event payload right here. So let's just duplicate. We'll make this an F vector. Input direction. Now, when we're actually kind of constructing this payload, so I think I need to find the name of the variable here. Oh, there's a consume stage containing payload. Let's just see where I can find this. Oh, in two places, right? So this is the pending payload, right? So we're gonna go here, and we're gonna add it here. So we can, I would assume, say, pretty much at this stage, do I have access to my character anywhere? So I do have some variable references that I believe I instantiated at the beginning. Yeah, to resolve this stuff. So I should have the owning character. I should have the player controller. And I forget which one will have this, but we want that movement vector. Forget. So So there's pending and last. So return the last input vector in real space that was processed by consumer vector, which is usually done by the pawn. So there's that one, but then there's also get pending movement vector. This is the most up-to-date value of the input vector. So we probably won't get pending. We'll just have to see what it looks like in practice, right? So we're going to say f vector input movement, or movement input direction, something like that. Spell equals that. And then I should be able to just say that. And maybe I need to just instantiate this to 0. 0 vector. Should be okay. I'm going to apply the same thing here. That should be okay, I hope. But we would also just need to go to the state tree task listener just to see if there's anything we also need to update there, which I'm not sure if we do, but I can't remember. It's been a while. Let's select tasks, listener, payload. I don't think we're necessarily. I don't think we're really bringing anything along here. I think that's all kosher. I think that's enough. So let's find out. And I suppose I would want to just print out this as well. So we log. Log temp. All right, so that whole thing is just not how you write that. I should probably make like a verbosity category for like this input buffering stuff. And kind of just wrap it in there. Just for like debugging everything. Because yeah, I have all this stuff like blocking input and all that stuff. Like, you know, if I was working in a professional environment, that would definitely be a requirement to have some sort of verbosity level for debugging purposes. But for now, whatever. But yeah, this is also this get movement input axis value. Like I would need to figure out how I should rewrite this one as well if I need to. But let's just see if this part works, and then we'll go from there. So how's everybody's weekend? Hope people were able to relax and enjoy themselves. Came back from a music festival this weekend. It was pretty good. Got to see the Gorillaz live. One of those bands where it's like, I don't think I'll ever see them. So why not take the opportunity to see them live? Okay. So now our payload should hopefully also contain the vector that we just added. So here we got input direction next to the vector, right? In theory, in our dodge, for example, we'll have to resolve our payload here, right? So I'm gonna say something with instruct. I forget what it is. I don't think it's valid. Reset set instruct value. No. Get, yeah, there we go. And then this is break, and then this is input event payload. And then I have all this stuff, right? I want to just promote this to an internal variable, right? So this is the, well, if I want to name this one input payload instance struct, or just input payload instance, and then this one's just input payload. Yo, what's up, Pixel? How's it going? No need to spam. We have our input payload, and we'll end the ability of, this just doesn't work. So now I have my resolved payload. And then from here, I just want to probably print out which direction I'm doing, or maybe even draw an arrow. So let's go back into our state tree just real quick, confirm that we're okay. So this is, we might have to just refresh. So input payload instance struct, yeah. That should, I think, will work. So let's first print. We'll break. Let's actually just print the input action, because this should be the evade, if the binding is correct in the state tree. So let's see. So I'm going to do it'll probably be best to slow things down. So I'm going to do a combo, and then I'm going to buffer a dodge, and yeah, I got IA evade. So the data is passing along. So now let's draw a debug arrow. So the line start will be get avatar actor info, actor location. That's our line start, and then this could be plus. And this is going to be our input vector direction. I don't know if we'll need to normalize it. We'll do it anyway. Times it by, and we'll give it some float. We'll say 500 just to make it pretty obvious. Add it to that location. Line end. Arrow size, we'll make it 10. Line color, we'll make it red-ish. Duration, we'll say 5. Thickness is 2. So this will hopefully, I guess we'll also just print the string out of the vector. And then we'll cross-reference it with what we see. Let me just do the raw value so we don't confuse ourselves. And we'll see if it matches what we see in the output log. So we'll slow down time a little bit. We'll do a combo, and then I'll do left, buffer, and we didn't get anything. So input, buffer movement, input is that. So pending may not be the right one. Let's also print or log the last input, which it'll be. So this is what I'm kind of looking for anyway. Like, do I see that in my output log actually? The input direction, you can't really see it too well, but it's zeroed out. So let's do get last of an input vector, and we'll do a hot reload there. And we'll see if we actually get a non-zero answer. Or not answered, but non-zero value. We'll try that again. Do slow motion. Do 1, 2, 3, and 4. Up, buffer. Okay, so yeah, that looks correct. It looks like we needed the last input vector, not the other one. So we're good there. We have that. So I want to say we have that stored, right? So find yaw dodge value. We have the cached input vector here. We're doing all of this stuff, but we would have to basically resolve the input direction ourselves, I think. So for example, if I want to do, we have a get motion warping component, which again I think should be resolved elsewhere, but the problem for today. I want to say we'll make a function. We'll say get input direction vector. There's also seems like there's a get input direction thing in the actual ability. So we're in here. Is there anything for input? No. Is there anything in here for the input? Yeah. So get input direction. And it's virtual. And we're doing this, which is available to us. Maybe I need to override this. So I think instead of it being blueprint callable, do I say blueprint implementable event? Anyway, this will be a vector. Go out direction. And I want to say, again, pure and const for sure, right? So when I get this payload, from this, we should be able to determine a few different things. What I would want to say is, if the action was buffered, that's when we want to start caring about these things. If it's not buffered, we just need to resolve it using the get last movement input vector. But then, so like that. But if it is buffered, that's where I want to check if this is nearly 0. Maybe some tolerance of like 0.1. If it is nearly 0, we kind of resolve this in the same way. We just get the latest input. If it's not near 0, then that's how we resolve it with the actual input direction. And that should give us the right information at runtime. So we should be able to say, hey, you can say out direction for now. We'll clean that up. And so now, instead of using cached output drive, also, is there unnecessary variables? Motion warp, target rotation, sure. Are we using this at all? Find. We are. But this out rotate, yeah, prompted fine. So we're gonna need to use the out direction here rather than cached. So I'm going to find all the places that we're using this cached input direction, and we'll just replace it with this. Grab that here. Whoop. There's Bob. And most likely I would want to, if possible, combine how I'm handling this cached input thing. So we'll do that next once we can kind of prove that this works. And kind of go from there. So let's see. So I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna buffer it behind me when I do the dodge. So buffered behind me, and yes, I went that way. But let's try again. I'm gonna buffer it behind me, but then I'm gonna move the stick back front. Okay, so it still went backwards, which we don't really want. So let's see. I guess this function messed up. So maybe it's the vector is nearly 0. So if it is nearly 0, okay. So actually, I kind of already know what it is. So I don't really care if, well, I technically do care about this. So if it is not nearly 0, we also want to do the check if this is nearly 0. Or I guess I could just use this check. Be like, hey, is this vector nearly 0? Yes. So basically we have to switch this now. Oops. I don't want the second one to be done. Let's see if we can organize this a bit better. Seems fine. Try that again. What IDE do you use? I'm using Writer. Just a personal preference at that point. So let's try again. I'm going to buffer the input behind me for the dodge. Okay, so the buffer didn't go through, which is fine. We'll try again. So buffer behind me. Let go of the stick. Bam. We dodge behind us. Do it again. Buffer behind us, but move the stick forward. Okay, I messed up the buffering again. See if I can actually do the buffering correct. Yeah, there you go. And then I dodged forward because my stick was moving forward. So it seems like that works as intended, which is great. So we're sending after rotation, we're adding the update warp target, we're playing the montage, we end the ability, we clear our warp targets, all good. Oops, don't really want that. So more or less, this is pretty clean. Delete anything unused, result, out rotation, camera boom, there's some camera lag, fine, which I guess we don't really need for the different dodge directions, honestly. So we could just set it to 5. But I'm not resetting the camera lag, am I? Which isn't good. So we'll cache the camera lag. It's a variable. Go. We can expose this as well if we really care about it. And then on endability. Camera lag speed. Cached. That should be okay. Okay, so it seems pretty responsive. I want to look into, because there's going to be cases, and I'll have to also fix this with the other, the melee stuff as well. Because I am referencing this cached input value in the input buffering. So most likely I would want to also do that here. So I don't need that anymore. So this is the payload for that direction, but there should be also cached movement, I think. So cached equals this, right? So is that not a thing? What am I doing? Let's look. Because we're getting this get input direction, right? So we're checking if this is not valid. That's valid. We're doing this, we're doing this. So if there's no input buffer component, we're doing that. Then there's this function, right? So get movement input axis value, which is a vector 2D, which I don't think we care about. I don't think this should be a vector 2D, honestly. I think we should just be able to cache this. So rather than this, we're going to say you function blueprint callable, no, blueprint callable, category input buffer, f vector get cached movement input vector const, and then we'll say pool b flush movement vector, like that. I'm going to delete this. And I'm going to do this. I think there has to be a vector 2D in here, right? Yeah, this, right? So I'm going to remove these two. They seem unnecessary. But in their place, I'm going to make it a F vector like that, right? And then we're just going to pop that out. We don't need it. And then in the actual buffer, we can hopefully just eliminate those. And then add action to input buffer. That. That for now. I don't think we need that. You could probably replace it with this new vector tree. That initialize component unnecessary, I think, here. Oops. So that should be enough for the moment, but then I need to instantiate this function. So get, I guess this could be inline. think that's okay. And then in the actual ability, to be yelling at me. So I would want to say, this is almost the same idea, right? So if we're saying if the last is nearly 0, and then we say, hey, if, I guess I can store it the same way, right? But this would be just a normal vector, be a get the vector true. Oh, yeah, I need to do something with this boolean. I guess it can't really be inline. So let's redo this. Oops. And then we say f vector let's name this then we say, hey, if. Okay, so this can't be const because we are changing the value. So we are not making that const. Where are you? So that should be okay. But then, yeah, back in the actual input stuff, right here, we're listening to input actions as well. Update here outside of state tree if needed. We also did the same here, which I think we're not doing yet, right? Like that. And so in theory, if I did this correctly, I would be getting a similar result. So we have f vector buffer input action get kind of, and then we flush it. So we got this, and then we say, you know, if this is nearly 0, and if this is nearly 0, we return 0. And then otherwise, we should just be able to return buffer movement input. I guess safe normal is fine. That should be the same thing as what we just implemented. So we should be able to just call get input direction. So let's see if we compile and go from that. Maybe make this a little bit bigger for you guys. Okay, so no. So get movement access value. Okay, so this also needs to be fixed. So we don't need to flush it there. There. Anywhere else? And this is F vector. I don't know why I was dealing with vector 2d4. That should be fine. I think I can also just cut out the middleman there and just put that here. It's for the targeting stuff, so hopefully that is all good. And then I would also need to update the same thing for the actual melee ability stuff too. Okay, let's open everything back up. All seems fine. So in theory, I should be able to just say get input direction rather than this thing. So get input direction. Is that not the right one? So let me put old. So what is the name of this ability? Input direction? Okay, so we actually do it automatically on activate ability. So we get this also, but I feel like it should be exposed. No. Blueprint callable. We'll get input vector. For whatever reason, it's not. So get input direction. Am I crazy? Yes, I am. But yeah, it's blueprint callable. Display name, get input direction. Can we find that category? So gas course. Ability. Is there input? Where's the ability system? It's strange. And also this vector is just not present for some reason. Cached. Yeah, cached input direction. Is that not a variable? That's very bizarre. Why? Blueprint read only. So something weird is happening. Okay. I don't think opening and closing will work or do anything, but let's try. Cache input. Okay, I have it here. Does that do anything? Let's just see if that breaks anything. Does that function the same way as I hope? Seems like it does. Seems like it doesn't. Seems like I get weird values. So let's see what happens when I get there. If we get there. I don't know if normalizing it will cause problems. This seems off. So we get the cached one. We store this cached one here, also here. So maybe there's a misunderstanding here, because yeah, this is triggered. Yeah, this one we're always checking what? The movement input action to buffer. Maybe there's a discrepancy there too, because it's not a F vector and it's a vector 2D. And so it has to remain a vector 2D, or I have to transcribe it. So maybe I have to write like, you know, a vector 2D movement input value. And then I say something like this. I wonder. And maybe I need to just double check that the input action buffer is correct. And then go from that. Hi, I just turned the stream a moment ago. Are you switching from the Lyra input system to a gameplay events input system? If so, why? I'm not. I'm just updating my state tree implementation, because I'm using a state tree task to listen to inputs and listening to those triggers to customize the payload that gets sent to the state tree to then transition to the appropriate state and passing along that information. So in this case, I'm adding to that payload a vector of the stick, so that we can know what the stick was doing at the moment that the action was buffered, and then we act upon that buffered action. So that you can have cases where during the attack you buffer or dodge backwards, but since by the time you actually execute that buffered action, if the stick is neutral, we can assume that backward direction is where you wanted to go. But if we see that your stick is something non-zero at the point of execution, we use that stick as like the latest information thing. So we're just working along those lines. And I'm trying to see if I can properly cache this vector as well individually outside of state tree, just in case I need to reference it in some way. So I'm testing if I'm doing it correctly, because the state tree implementation seemed like it was working fine, but I'm buffering backwards and, you know, forgot that we had this. So let me try again. That seemed right. So let's see. I'm good. Attack, 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 and then buffer backwards, let go of the stick. Nothing came out. Let's try again. buffer backwards, let go. We got there, right? We can also try it to the left. Buffer. Got out, right? So close. Yep. So now if I buffer backwards, oh, let me not jump off the edge. So if I buffer backwards, but then move the stick forward, I go forward. So that seems all good. So it seems valid. It seems like it's working as intended. So for now, with anything that has the input payload, I'm going to just take that as the most valid information I can get and just pass it along. So that is good. So now I need to do the same thing for example, the daggers, right? So we have the payload. We just need to kind of explicitly say we want to use that payload inside of that melee ability as well. Oh, yep. The cat is springing into action. Oh no. What? I don't know what she wants to do. I'm sure she wants to peace out. Fine. Okay. So, for example, we'll start with the evade attack, right? So we are passing in that payload already. You see it here on the right-hand side. I don't think the melee ability is... Maybe it is. I can't remember. It's been a while since we looked at this. Let's look at GA melee base. We don't have anything. Do we use cached at all? How and where do you currently store your input buffer? It's in my input buffer component. So in the case of state tree, the task reads the trigger events and completed events and everything like that, and we kind of store that information as we go. But in the cases of the actual attack, so for example, let me find a dagger combo chooser. So looking at the first dagger attack, right? We have a buffer, and we're buffering. I separated things into categories. So we have the evasive category and the weapon category, and the weapon can be split up into primary, secondary, or specials. Which I guess I'll have to figure out how I want to change that with the new input scheme, because I'm thinking about introducing more attacks for the actual weapon and moving the range thing to a separate input, so I might have to revisit this. But inside of the input buffer component, I believe that there's a blueprint. There's also this legacy implementation that I gotta delete and clean up after. But we basically have these categories where we say, okay, the input weapons.primary, we have the basic attack, and we have the special attack hold. And then under the secondary, we have the ranged attack, secondary weapon, basic attack, special attack hold, and then the special, and then the evade. So they're all categorized so that we can say, say for example, we wanted the dodge buffer to be earlier or later than the attack buffer window. So you would have like a longer recovery for the attack or something like that. We could create separate rows for those things. And so as we're placing the input buffers, we're blocking the input for a short duration of this window as well. So 30% of this window is just a pure block of the input. And then after that 30%, we start recording everything. And the recording mostly happens partly in the input buffer listener. So this input listener task, we check to see if the buffer is listening and it's open, and we pass the information to the actual input buffering, and we record all the information, the last frame and all the information, whether or not the category is blocked or if it's open for that specific category, and then we construct all the payload information. And then once the input buffer is opened in our task down here, we check, hey, do we have something in the buffer? Get that information, send that state tree event with that payload. So we get that dagger event, for example, so input state tree.melee.light triggered, which is recorded via this input task over here. So we send that state tree event when we get it, and we pass this information along to see if it was buffered, the stick direction at that moment, the action that was buffered, and the input action value if you wanted it. And while we're working on actually having a melee base, consider that as well. So that's what we're going to work on next, because, for example, you won't really be able to... Maybe I can show the stick on screen. I don't think I actually... Can I add a source at real time? I think it's a browser source. Controller. So I could probably maneuver this a bit somewhere. I don't know how well you guys are going to see that, but hopefully that will show you. So for example, say I'm attacking and then I buffer my second attack behind me. It already seems to work because I think I'm taking into consideration this cached information anyway. But that's why I want to double check. Oops. Cache. Yeah, so we have the cache input direction anyway. So it seems like it's going to work, but I would prefer mainly to get this payload just because we have it. So what we can do, again, is make that instance struct. So we're going to say input payload, if I can spell, instance. And we'll say instance struct. And then we say get instance struct value. If it's not valid, we'll end the ability. And then we're going to break this as input payload. And the stuff with the input buffering and everything like that, it is inspired by, make sure, by the conversation and the information I got with the newsletter from Quad Solar, I'm not sure. I shared it at the beginning of the stream, the actual full post. He uses straight up gameplay events and everything like that, just pure gas implementation. So maybe something worth looking at. I'll paste it again there for you. Super smart guy. I think he's the lead engineer on Lords of the Fallen, so he definitely knows what he's talking about. Definitely follow him on Twitter and subscribe to that newsletter. Super interesting and good reference point. So yeah, we have the cached input direction. So I would rather say, because I can't set the cache input direction. Can I get cache? Yeah, I can't really access it either the same kind of way, which is kind of confusing. I'm not sure why. But more or less, I could probably copy this implementation, right? Just do that. So owning character is not really a thing. Should just be able to get avatar actor info on. So I'd cast it on. Can I get gas course character from actor info? That automatically makes it at least a character. I can probably just store this locally. That pass you along. Switch it up. Oh god. Yeah, I subscribed to his newsletter 2 weeks ago too. Is there any way I can combine the ladder input system with his gameplay event-based buffer input system? I would imagine yes. I guess the issue really is Because like the library input system kind of maps like the actual triggering. Like I think at runtime. What does the library input do? I mean, I can look at the input mapping context, right? So not IMC, but IC player. Because mine's no longer using that fully anymore. Because these are the native events, and then these are the ability actions. So yeah, for example, I believe all this is really doing is saying it's granting this input.native.action.ability1, I believe, dynamically at runtime. It's when the ability is granted, it's setting this asset tag to that ability dynamically. Yeah, got activation tags. Yeah, so like the only way you can really get this, I guess what you would need to do is so basically when you're recording inputs, you would then need to determine which, I guess, input tag or this this input tag, what input tag it's mapped to. So say you get a recording of an input action IA_ability_01. You would then say, hey, when we close the buffer, if this is the input action we're doing, I guess there would have to be some interface connection between this input config to say, hey, that ability is input.nativeaction.ability.1, and then you would need to activate that ability automatically. Which I believe I had done as well in my input buffer component, but it's kind of legacy now. Let me see, close. So we have activate buffer input ability. And then we basically all I really do, and this is maybe not the best idea, or what I used to do, I should say, is I simulated that input action. I commented it out here, but I have simulate input action. And basically I take that subsystem, I take the enhanced local player subsystem, and I just inject input for that action. And so it's like you press the button, and so the other systems kind of respond in the same way it would like if you would press the button yourself. And so it kind of goes through that as well. But passing along the information, I think it would have to be done through gameplay events. So like I know as well, well, I forgot to put on my mic better quality. Because like I'm not sure, I guess I don't know if in his newsletter if he talks about how he correlates it to the to make it a gameplay event, I should say. So he just calls handle gameplay event. And obviously this is the stuff that's down here, right? Ability triggers. So you would need to have also a gameplay event down here. So yeah, maybe he doesn't use the Lyra input system. So I guess I assume then at runtime all he does is grant the abilities that we want it to be mapped to input. But again, I don't know how you would really do this. Like you have those input IDs like the old legacy implementation. Because yeah, I don't know if you can have both, right? Like you can't have it triggered by input, but also by a gameplay event, unless when you press that input, you also send that gameplay event. And you construct the payload that way. So yeah, not sure. Good questions though. Let me clean this up. Okay. should just be able, hopefully, to do that and still get the same results. I just gotta make sure. Okay, now I need to build this and then we have input action and then instance. So what did I do wrong? So there's I guess I could just cast that, right? For events, parameters, yeah, so probably under parameters, we want to have this instance struct. So this input action, are we even using this input action? Oh. What? I think that's legacy. Now in our daggers again, yeah, I'll need to file that. Everything gets rebound. Also, yeah, default warp distance. I need to make sure. Well, I made that custom on purpose there. So what is this input action though? Why is that still here? Unless I have to refresh again, that'll be on, yeah. And then this is player input event or input event payload. We can use that enter event, find it. That should be enough. And we just gotta do this a few times. Okay, 3. Put that. And heavy hold. I should be able to grab that too. I don't think it does it have it? No, heavy hold doesn't need it, I guess. Yeah, I guess it doesn't need it. Equipping, it's fine. Dagger special, don't think it needs it either. That should be good. So I'm trying to make sure. So I'm going to buffer backwards, let go. Buffer backwards, let go. And then buffer backwards, go right. Good. Well, when I say right, I mean it was his right, my forward. Backwards, let go. Yeah, that should be okay. And then, yeah, I don't know if we want an explicit window of like sort of correction to like update the warp target position with stick input, maybe, but for now it's whatever. So now I wanted to do something to kind of make my life easier, because again, the one thing that we don't like, when I say we, I mean me, but there's a pretty common paradigm of being like, okay, I need a certain amount of components. I need to check if it's valid or not myself. And so you have, for X amount of components, you will always need to have, or at least it's safest to make sure that you check if it's valid or not, right? Before you use it. So I'd rather the base ability do that for me. So I'm hoping, I'm using Claude here. I'm trying to see if there's a way to check if we can figure out, if we know if a variable is in a specific like category, in Blueprint. So get category F name. Is that really a thing? I wonder. Let's see. So there should be, I think. What's the name of the function that gets called here when you? It's not granted, right? It's not give. So on give ability, right? So we have all this stuff. So I would want to be able to then handle something, or maybe not on give, but try. Is it try activate ability? There's try activate ability on spawn, which gets to try activate ability. But I don't know if I need to. So this locally control client try activate ability. Call notify ability failed. Then there's internal. Is there something? What's the override? Can activate ability, right? So here, right? So probably here. This is where I would want to check components. So for an example, we have already one in here called motion warping component. So let me make a new function. So you function full validate components. So I want to say is it they the native properties here. So get category F name walks up the owner chain. So is that really something I can get? So F blueprint header utils get blueprint variable category. No. So can I say 4? So T field iterator F property. Right. Is it you? Yeah. I'm hoping I can do this. Can I say I mean, can I also cast to see if it's a component, I suppose? don't know. Let's see. Let's see if I can get Cloud to help me here. Right there. So yeah, we're getting the category. So constantly, so then we would maybe say like if. I feel like then I would need to make like a P array of F properties, and then just say like properties dot add this. So then we're getting all of them. And then I would say for, can I cast a property? Can I say, is there like a base component? Would it be like this? And then would I be saying like, so a character equals then would I say like, or do I have to just say class? So it would have to be like new actor component class, or would it just be new class? Yo, what's up, man? So what's wrong here? So is there a way? So can I substitute non-type template argument property class for get owner class? Okay. I don't say this, do I? No. Yeah, there's no. Find component. Yeah, that should be right. Do I have to cast? I forget. I don't know how the classes work. So do I have to say like you actor component class? Oh, what's the T subclass of maybe? So let's say like a actor component or something. New actor component. Do I have to say like T subclass actor component equals I mean, can I just say property class? Okay, so I wrote it here. So property cast field, property is component. Okay, so I would basically have to do it like this, right? Okay, so we're checking with an F property. So we're basically here, right? So I would have to say, let's just start over. So const F object property cast field property. Mostly this, but like again, it's failing. So if object property, so it says I can move to the if statement, of course. Here, so we're checking that, and then we want to check if it's a component, so we can also write that out, right? So const bool b is component equals the implementation, validate components. You know, probably wouldn't have namespace build component property names. So we need something called resolve properties, which is this. And we would need to build property names. Oh, so it's quite a lot of stuff. Because of course it is. So let's see. So source replace and validate components at this. So it's doing this, and we're building property names. So we have a variable for property names, I assume. The immutable. So let's just grab this stuff. Generate both of those. So now resolve. That's fine. Back down here. So resolve component properties. More or less this stuff. And then validate components is just me calling this. Then there's also build component property name. So this. Okay. So what is this exactly doing? So we're getting the property names, right? So we have this array of component property names, which is fname. And we're saying, okay, they're built. So we're going through all of our properties and we're checking to see, hey, is it of an actor component? It's a valid class and everything like that. So we're getting all the property names. And then we're, if we're with editor, we do this. But I feel like we can only really log this stuff. So it's editor utilities. So that's all that. So we got all the property names, right? So when we call a resolve, if they're not already built, we get all the property names. We check if they're empty. And then the actors to search are these guys. And then we do our ability class. Good. So then we get through all the properties. Good. So if they don't have a valid property or property class, we're good. Then we see the actor component. So we're going through all of them. So we're saying, hey, is the search actor valid? Okay. And then we check find component by class. They're like this, right? If not found component, all resolved. Good. So then we turn all resolved. Okay, so that should hopefully work. Let's see. Figuring out all this like editor utility stuff is tough, but I guess it makes sense. So we make a list and we're going through all of them. For each property in the property names, we find that property, we check if it's valid, and then we keep going. And we just try to find that component if it's valid in any of the places, right? So we check the player controller, and things like that. So let's see. Compiled, so that's good. So let's see if this works. And if it works, then I think we can call it a day. And then this week we'll work on updating our control scheme. So if we look, we have in our components already motion warping component, our target component, and our input buffer component. So if we go into, I don't know if it's in our we might have to check our other abilities real quick. So let me go to melee real quick. So on activate ability, we're already doing a bunch of these component checks, which now that we have what we have, I'm hoping this will work. So what we're gonna do is I'm gonna create a new component. I'm gonna just also make it motion warp. And actually, I don't think we actually called the actual function. So we're not calling validate components anywhere, so we forgot to do that. So let's fix that. So is it try activate ability? Or is it can activate ability? Validate components, what does it take? Nothing. Or do I have to say mutable, so B component remains built? No, that's not it. So does that, can it be const? Not convert const you get into. So does this also need to be const? Well, no. Why? Is it because it's... I mean, does target object really need to be a thing? Why not? Let's... Can I just say this? I mean, what's the... Let me go back. So it's just a U object, right? So do I have to say U object equals cast U object this? And is it because this is also const? Again, does this need to be const then? Don't know. Still doesn't matter. So I'm not convert const object 9 now. I'm just not make that const. There you go. And this can be moved to that. And it should be okay. Now we got another error because now this is calling a const thing. Blah blah blah. So validate. And this has to be const. So resolve. So again, if I make this const, then I'm going to get a problem. Elsewhere here, I always forget how to convert something not const. Check. So it's const cast, I guess. Okay, so do I have to say, so you object, target object equals like that, but again, this would be cast like that. So you object cast object, right? So what's the problem? So this has to be const, right? And then I could say you object, I'll say const that. Maybe I can move this into this. And then there you go. So maybe that will be okay. Let's see. And then, yeah, we might have to continue this tomorrow. Well, let's just see if we actually can compile this bad boy. Fingers crossed, gang. Okay, no. So we have unreachable code somewhere. Let's see. Oh. Let's try that again. And if this does work, then that means we could do some more cleanup here. But that'll be for tomorrow, probably, hopefully. Okay. How do you clear the input buffer for your abilities? Do you manually call a clear function somewhere, or does the buffer or the inputs in the buffer clear itself after a certain amount of time? I should add a timer as well, which that's a good idea. I gotta figure out how to do that. But basically, as soon as the buffer closes, so we open the buffer, and then at the end of the notified state, we close the buffer. So when we close the buffer, we get the last known input. We store that, we send that out, and then we clear the buffer at that point. We flush everything else out. But yeah, it would be probably a good idea to have on the notify state level the timer for it to manually flush it out as well. So yeah, something to do next time. So do we have component? So let's add another component. We'll call it 0, right? And technically, if I try to attack, we get a crash, I guess. So under validate components, we get here. So is this, so this seems like it's invalid. So this ensure, so the current actor info is not valid, it seems. So it seems like we're not going to be able to attack. So can I pass anything along? Validate components. Oh, that's wrong. Space. When we call validate components, we're doing this and we're passing get actor info, right? So by the time we're here, we have some information. So we should be able to just do this actor info instead. So I feel like maybe this needs to pass along the actor info myself. And then maybe I could just then say like this. I guess has to be also const, right? So const pointer. So let's copy that. And this, we're at the F. Maybe that's better. Again, we're gonna have to compile, so let's try. But yeah, going back to your question, where's the component? So in my component, when we eventually get the information, right? So on the state tree level, you know, we're queuing everything up, and then we eventually consume. And so basically, we flush everything out here. Because essentially, we're only keeping one in the queue at all times. We're not actually storing this really in an array. So we only have to like just wipe out this state tree queue. So when there is a timeout, we might have to revisit that to see how that can really work. Because we could just say, hey, I guess that might be a worry. It's like, how do you know the correct one to wipe out? Because like, say I have like a 1 second timeout. If in that time I buffer one action, then I buffer a second different action. I'll figure it out later. Okay, so can't have exposed pointer of this type. Let me just fix where I'm at. Can I just say this? And then can I just say this? Or this? Yes, I can. Let's see. I mean, because this is also doing the same pointer stuff, right? Why is it not complaining about this one? Is it because it's under protected and this is public? And this, maybe this doesn't have to. This doesn't have to be a U function. Hold on. Cancel. No. This can be just a pointer. Yeah, like based on the guy's article as well, he said like 0.4 is a good starting point for a timeout. So what I'm thinking and my assumption is when we buffer something in a certain category, we set a timer immediately. And then with that timer, we say, you know, we also have to be careful where we have to check if the buffer's still open by the time the time ends, and if it is still open, then yeah, we check to see what the current queue is, and we have to see if in that top queue it's the same input action for that timer. So if we press the evade button, oops. Okay, so now can I actually take an actor info? We would say like, hey, we press dodge after 0.4 seconds. We need to check, is the latest one dodge? But then the question becomes, if I'm spamming dodge, do I have to kind of reset this timer? I would assume so for each unique thing. But I would also say like, if I dodge and then I press attack, that previous timer just needs to flush and restart with the new one anyway. So it seems like it's going to be a retriggerable timer event. And it probably will be like a lambda. So yeah, we'll see if this works. If this doesn't work, then we'll just call it a day and continue tomorrow. Let's see, we have the second component. We'll see if we get a ensure. We don't. And I'm able to attack. So component variable motion work 0 is outside the components category, but will still be auto-resolved. So why is it outside the components category? So we call validate, then we resolve, and we get here, right? And then eventually we get where is this warning coming from? Here. So if category does not equal can I figure out what it is? So okay, so I manually moved it to the components category. Let's see if I still get that same error. Or warning, I should say. So that worked. So now I should just be able to resolve these myself. So we'll do that later. We'll do that at a different time. So yeah, so tomorrow we'll look into the input buffer, the timeouts, and we'll do a cleanup of this stuff now that we can actually kind of instantiate components in C++. We don't have to do that in blueprints at runtime when we try to activate the ability. Should clean up a little bit of how we're going to do stuff. And then, yeah, then we'll move on to the actual input stuff. So that's where I'm going to end it for today. We have a good amount of people watching on Twitch, so thank you guys so much for watching. Let's go ahead and share the love here. We'll go ahead and raid. So let me do a raid, and we'll do Devro. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. It's much appreciated. If you're not already following me here on Twitch, a follow would be much appreciated. Make sure to also subscribe on YouTube. We'll be back hopefully tomorrow. So until then, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Have a good week coming up, and I'll see you soon.
Cherry's Game Dev. That was a long name and a handful. How are you doing? What brings you here? What have you been working on? We're currently working on my post-apocalyptic role-playing game, where we currently work on buying perks and stuff. Wait, they're new people. We need to show the doggo. Oh yeah, there we go. Whoop. Yeah, currently we are